Over the past week, India, or those with ties to India, were in headlines for their attempt to leave a Desi imprint on global sport. So, for this week's episode, we will be discussing two topics. First, we speak of Indians or Indian origin folks buying stakes into franchises of a British cricket league called the 100. And then, in the second part of this podcast, we talk about India's bid to host the Commonwealth Games in 2030, 2 decades after that 2010 edition, which made headlines for, well, reasons right and wrong. Welcome to the Game Time podcast. This is me, Amit Kamath, and joining me today is my co-host, Mihir Vasavda. Mihir, for the longest time, we've heard people are very unhappy with the fact that football clubs in UK are being sold to foreigners. There are Russian owners, things like that. Now it seems as if whatever we are seeing with the 100, there's almost like a Indian takeover of the English cricket that is happening, right?
Hi, Amit. Yeah, it's interesting, right? The news that we are seeing from England over the last 2 weeks. So to kind of give a backdrop of what's happening is in England, they have this tournament called the 100, which, like the name suggests, Amit, is the name for a format where the match lasts 100 balls. So we have Test cricket, that's 5 days. Of course, we have ODIs, 50 overs per side. Then we have T20s, 20 overs per side. We have the spin-offs of it, the T10 and all that crap. England, who were the innovators, who were the pioneers of the sport in many ways, they also started T20, then came up with this concept called the 100, where one innings lasts 100 balls. Straight up, it's a very simple format to understand. And it's, I think, fair to say that it wasn't heading anywhere. So I guess what are trying to do is have those franchisees. They have IPL style franchisees over there, spread over multiple cities from London to Birmingham, Manchester, everywhere. So they've taken those franchisees who are associated with their counties and sold at least 49% of stake in them. The idea, they say, is to use whatever money that comes in to reinvest in the grassroots so that the traditional formats do not suffer or they are given more impetus financially. Ab isme hua ye hai, Amit, ki the moment there was this whole thing that, there was an opportunity for people to buy, say, a team that's based in the Lords, at the Oval, at Old Trafford, at Trent Bridge, you knew what was going to happen because there are these generation of fans outside England who have, revered these venues. And it's not a surprise then a lot of these fans are either Indians or Indian origin people, like you mentioned. So, yeah, we have seen a scenario where the Mumbai Indians owners, Reliance Industries, have paid, I think, close to 1,500 crore for the Oval-based franchisee. That's the Oval Invincibles.
Mere 650.
650 crores. Okay, sorry, my bad.
Mumbai Indians was 650. That was the Indian origin CEOs consortium.
Yeah. 1,500 was a consortium. And that's, I think, the most interesting part, right? Amit, you have on individual capacities, the CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella. Then you have Nikesh Arora of the Palo Alto Networks. Then Sundar Pichai from Alphabet. You have all these people coming in together and spending 1,500 crores for the Lords-based franchisee. Only Sunrisers, Hyderabad's owners have got a full stake in the 100 franchise. But you're right, it's the Indianification of English sport, English cricket, so to say.
And Mir, not to forget that there are 2 more teams, Trent Rockets and Southern Brave, who are still up for grabs. So in case you have like a 500 crore, 600 crore lying spare in your FD account or something, might want to consider buying it because it's apparently the hottest thing in sport right now. Every Indian or Indian origin person seems to be rumbling under their sofa, whatever, for change and like forking out money.
I think that's how the weekend will be spent, yeah.
Not us. Should be mentioned, not us, but then still.
Well, you can hope, yeah.
Yeah, as I mentioned, it's very fascinating how or whether there will be any acceptance for this or how this will be accepted, considering, we've seen all of these complaints that English Premier League fans have, that their beloved sport, football, is slowly but surely being taken over by foreigners. The owners are maybe Russians or whatever country they come from. Their fans are very, very ethnically diverse now. We've heard a lot of complaints from fans, saying that sometimes when they want to buy a ticket to a team that they used to follow, whatever, for 3 generations, now they've been priced out because there's always a tourist family from one of the Asian countries, from Europe, somewhere, who is very willing to pay top dollar for it. So that sort of mindset is kind of coming in football. But on cricket, we are seeing that a lot of people are paying a lot of money. And the minority stake that these, as you mentioned, all these Indian origin guys bought, it's kind of funny. They've actually picked up a minority stake in the team, which means I don't know how much say they will have in anything at all. So what is the point?
Absolutely. And what you say about the comparisons with the football structure, right, in England and the resentment they have there. The fundamental difference I see is ki when the foreign owners, say for example, even some of the Indians who have gone on and brought a club in England, they've had complete controlling rights of that club. I mean, if you say, for example, look at the Glazers, they take day-to-day decisions for Manchester United. Same was with Roman Abramovich with Chelsea, or the Abu Dhabi royal family with Manchester City. So they have complete hold over the club. They're not 49% stakeholders. And that's where, this is puzzling because, I mean, London Spirit, for example, जो Silicon Valley Consortium ने जो team खरीदी है, they are based in Lords, and that's perhaps the only selling point which they had. Because Lords is what? MCC, right? The Marylebone Cricket Club. They are still the kind of, I don't know if owners, but they will have a major say. They'll have all the important say in what happens at Lords. The county, say for example at Surrey, who play at the Oval, their county cricket, they won't have any impact. Like Reliance Industries won't have a day-to-day say in what happens at the Surrey county cricket. Same goes for the team based in Manchester, which, the Goenkas have bought. So you don't exactly know what the billionaires have bought here, except like we have read at and in some pieces, right? It seems to be a vanity buy. There is, however, an interesting take. Our sports editor Sandeep Dwivedi in his piece had mentioned कि कैसे आगे चल के this could take a very different turn. This is like a very base level investment right now, and whether the 100 turns into T20 and these are franchises which eventually they would have bought for peanuts when their ultimate evaluation is made. You also are looking at a scenario where someone like a Virat Kohli, who's now based in London, plays for a team that is also based in London once he retires, whenever that is, or even before he retires, who knows? Because I think it's a matter of time that the Indian board allows Indian players to play in these leagues, at least the retired Indian players to play in these leagues. So whether they're seeing value, say 5 years down the line in this, or like we had discussed in many of our earlier episodes, Amit, that by the end of this decade, perhaps cricket would have moved to a more club-based format than the country-based thing it is right now, given the buying spree that's happening of franchises all over.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mihir, so right now, just for clarification, I think the BCCI does not allow current India players to play for rival leagues unless and until you are retired yourself. So once you do that, you are entitled to go and play. I mean, I think there is like a cool off period and then you can go play wherever in South Africa. And we are seeing a lot of these Indian franchises already putting their mark in other leagues. The South African league has a lot of Indian IPL franchises also buying in teams there. You have the same in USA, you have the same in UAE. So we are seeing like almost like a franchises in a sense.
Colonization, cricket colonization.
Exactly that. Yeah, so we are getting that. And Mir, just a very, very fascinating thing, that consortium that you spoke about, the Sundar Pichai, Nikesh Arora, Satya Nadella wala thing. These are 11 Indian origin people who came together, pooled in all their money and put in somewhere around 144 million pounds or somewhere around 1,500 crore. That's a massive amount just for a minority stake.
It's insane, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And Mihir, the other thing is that they've put in all this money, and this is obviously not coming in from the corporations themselves. This is the people who've invested in their individual capacities. But the more important thing is they've invested in a endeavor which was not doing so well, hence the garage sale. So clearly these guys are seeing something that, well, the ECB is maybe not seeing or the rest of us are not seeing.
So ECB's thing, I was reading a lot on this, what's reported in the English media, and ECB, in a way, what they're saying is, look, we are getting these hundreds of millions of pounds and dollars for, like you said, for practically nothing. And this will only help us boost our domestic game. We'll pool in these resources and reinvest at a lower level and make that solid. So that's one line of the defense that ECB is taking. Of course, the opposition to this whole idea is आप in a way बेच रहे हो England cricket को, and you're giving this entry to foreign buyers, foreign owners, and you don't know where this is leading to. So there is this whole uncertainty around it, but nevertheless, it's the big development in cricket this week, except, the Rohit Sharma outburst during the pre-match press conference before the Nagpur ODI, Amit. I think, I don't have much to add on this. Shall we move on to our second topic of the day?
Yeah, the other way of India trying to politely colonize the sport by हम मेडल्स टैली में शायद अभी भी इतना अच्छा नहीं कर रहे हैं एट द ओलंपिक्स, बट देन at least we are doing our best to get the Olympics to India, where we've already spoken about very, very actively trying to push for a 2036 Olympics. And now, Mihir, we have a report from you in last week's newspaper that India is also trying to get the 2030 Commonwealth Games to India. And obviously, we've hosted the Commonwealth Games in the past. Olympics, we've not. But this will be slightly rare because we've just recently had an incident where, Brisbane was supposed to host the Commonwealth Games. They pulled out. These guys, the Commonwealth Games Federation, had to scrounge around for trying to find somebody who would host, and they eventually ended up with Glasgow. So yeah, Mihir, what is it about sporting events, sporting infrastructure that the rest of the world is not finding value in, that India is definitely going gung-ho for?
So, simple answer to this is the 2036 Olympics. India is going all out to get that games. Yeah. So, whether they are successful or nahi, it's anybody's guess at this moment. Amit, there have been so many developments in the last 4-5 days, all of which we are not at the liberty to report right now because we haven't been able to confirm. But they have, for example, hired bid experts who have worked with glamorous, successful bids in the past. India, when I say they, I mean India.
Mir, just for the sake of explaining, what's a glamorous, successful bid? Like just an example, if you can give that away, if you are at the liberty to share it.
So, when I say glamorous, successful bids is what I mean is that, Olympics held in glamorous cities, Olympics which were stunning visually in the way they organized, in the way they were presented, and the way they won the bid, right? In the past. Abhi, isme situation ye hai ki if I say the city name right now, it will be a giveaway in a way. So I'm just restraining from that point of view because we are yet to kind of officially hear on that front. So I know it's thoda sa beating around the bush, but I'll leave it at that. Perhaps we'll discuss this in a later episode. But what I'm trying to say is on the 2036 Olympics front, there is a lot happening. And India, or if I'll take the liberty to say Ahmedabad, because Ahmedabad is the focal point of the 2036 Olympics, is putting everything out there. एक तरीके से ये थोड़ा सा वो डर का शाहरुख खान वाला सीन है कि वो उनका प्यार तो दिखा रहे हैं, अभी सामने से प्यार मिलेगा कि नहीं वो उन्हें पता नहीं है. So काफी one-sided love story हो रही है from Ahmedabad, and what the whole idea, the thinking behind just going all out with the other events in the build-up to 2036 is to show the world that they are indeed a sporting destination, because everywhere we go right now, everywhere we talk right now, even amongst us, Ahmedabad doesn't have a sporting culture outside cricket. They don't have players coming out of there. They don't have hosting experience. So the two big negative factors which they see, they're trying to correct that, at least one of the two. So between, say, for example, this year and 2030, they've targeted a slew of events, individual sports as well as multidiscipline. And the Commonwealth Games is a part of that plan because the Asian Games in 2030 and 34 are already taken, Qatar and Saudi Arabia. So that leaves you with either the South Asian Games, jiski value hum sabko pata hai ki kya hai. There is the World Military Games, which again they're targeting. It's a renowned competition in those circles, the military and police circles. And then you have Commonwealth Games. And Commonwealth Games is, in a way, a good testing ground to see how you're prepared for something like an Olympics, although the scale and the size are very different. But Amit, what I find very interesting and very funny is, एक साल पहले तक, मतलब एक साल, January just खत्म हुआ है, तो थोड़े महीनों पहले तक इनफैक्ट इंडिया में ये बात चल रही थी कि यार वो थोड़ी कॉलोनियल लेगेसी है, कॉमनवेल्थ गेम्स में पार्ट नहीं लेना चाहिए, वी शुड नॉट बी लुकिंग एट इट सीरियसली. एंड सडनली उसमें से अब बात चल रही है कि हम 2030 के कॉमनवेल्थ गेम्स होस्ट करना चाहते हैं. एंड द टॉक्स आर एट दे हैव एडवांस्ड प्रीटी क्विकली. दे आर स्टिल इनफॉर्मल लेवल. But Commonwealth Games president has met the Gujarat chief minister. He's met the Indian Olympic Association chief minister. He's traveled to Ahmedabad, to Bhubaneswar, seen potential venues. And given कि काफी countries interest नहीं दिखा रही है इसमें, I'll not be surprised if 2030 we'll be in Ahmedabad reporting the Commonwealth Games.
Mir, also what is fascinating is that, as you said, kuch time pehle tak we were not that keen on hosting the Commonwealth Games because there was all of this connotations about it having a colonial legacy and all of that. But Mir, the fact that, these successive Commonwealth Games that we are seeing, them dropping a sport like shooting, would you say that that also kind of has a role to play in this? Where the people who are making these decisions are saying that, if somebody else is hosting it and all of these events get taken away, you have an Olympics coming in 2036. Let's say India gets it, but you suddenly have एक 6 साल पहले या 2 साल पहले उसका जो Commonwealth Games होता है, वहां पे you don't have shooting, so your medal count is anyway low. That kind of affects the perception in a sense also, because obviously the Commonwealth Games will be like a testing ground of sorts if we get it and if we get the Olympics, but a testing ground plus also something that helps us build a narrative around the impending Olympics as well. Do you see that also playing in?
It's a nice point. It might be like that. Although also at the same time, I feel कि we saw 2010 में Amit very clearly the sporting impact of Commonwealth Games, right? Immediately in 2012, India had its highest number of medals at that point in history. The Asian Games after that were kind of successful too. So हमने 4 साल तक बाद में the advantages of hosting a big event we saw there. So in that sense also, in terms of preparing athletes also, it comes at the right time. 2030 अगर जो आप CWG host कर रहे हो तो who knows the ripple effect of it. At least 4 साल तो रहेगा, and then you keep going on with the same pace and you are well prepared at least for the 2036 Olympics. And again हमने काफी सारे ऐसे sports थे in 2010 Commonwealth Games जिसका impact काफी समय तक हमने 10 years तक देखा almost. Say for example gymnastics, although Deepa Karmakar wasn't the beneficiary of the 2010 Commonwealth Games, gymnastics हमने देखा कि it exploded big time with 1 or 2 decent performances, and Deepa Karmakar was born. And we saw it in many other ways as well. So that is another benefit of hosting it. Although, अगर जो हम details में जाएंगे, the merit of it या नहीं, that's a very different conversation. The fact that the talks have taken place, India haven't yet officially submitted their expression of interest. They're likely to do that by the end of March. So we'll see how that bit goes.
Yeah. Any other sport that you feel that India should now try colonizing the world?
I think football ही बचा है.
Football, huh? We tried that with the Under-17 World Cup in a very, very small scale. And then with the Women's Under-17 World Cup. But I think maybe not all sports are meant to be.
Actually, yeah. थोड़ा सा अगर जो तू अहमदाबाद का प्लान भी देखेगा अमित, they have an interesting plan. They are getting, say for example, they're trying to get the Asian Swimming Championships. Then they're trying to get a couple of fencing World Cups and volleyball World Championships. So the variety of sports that are being targeted, I won't say colonizing the sporting world, but at least interesting. We'll be going beyond the obvious sports जो हम इंडिया में usually देखते हैं.
Plus, Mihir, just tell me, I think you recently had a visit to Ahmedabad where you saw the progress that the city is kind of making as it tries to, gear up for all of these events that it plans to host in the lead up to the actual Olympics. So just talk about what sort of progress we are seeing.
It's massive because Ahmedabad didn't have any sporting infrastructure, right? हम लोग अगर जो 3 साल पहले की भी बात करें, when the national games were held there, they didn't have much to show. काफी सारे temporary venues थे, and जो venues थे, they were quite old and everything. I remember the shooting range at that point. वहाँ पर shooting range की tiles थोड़ी ऊपर नीचे लगाई थी उन्होंने, so they had to put carpet so that when the shooters stand, they're able to balance themselves. So इतनी बुरी हालत थी of some of the venues. So if you take that and look at what's happening right now, there's a massive change. I went there exactly a month ago, and एकदम war footing पे काम हो रहा है यार, in the sense कि they are making a multi-sport complex right in the city center in Ahmedabad. It will be finished in a month, and it will be able to host like badminton, TT, swimming, multiple sports. काफी कुछ हो रहा है in terms of infrastructure at that. This one I'm talking about is in Naranpura. It will rival many of the existing venues. First of all, Bhubaneswar, which has been like this go-to venue for multi-sports right now. And Delhi, we've seen during the India Open, the condition of the stadium and the Canadians complaining about the quality of air and the upkeep of the stadium and everything. So, Delhi, Bhubaneswar, Guwahati, all your traditional centers are going to have a run for their money, because once this new swanky new stadium is built in Ahmedabad, I think a lot of events will be transferred there. And then on the sidelines, you have, two mega facilities more coming up. One is around the Narendra Modi Stadium, where, they're again completely revamping the whole thing. फिर आप थोड़ा गांधीनगर तरफ जाओ तो there is this कराई करके एक है जगह जहाँ पर they're planning to build a shooting complex and modest 30,000 seater athletic stadium. वो सब हो रहा है. एंड जस्ट yesterday, अमित यार, उनका जो सिटी का बजट होता है, राइट, सो द अहमदाबाद म्युनिसिपल कॉर्पोरेशन हैज आल्सो डिसाइडेड कि the roads around the Narendra Modi Stadium, Naranpura, Karai and all those places, they'll now be sports themed roads. So whatever that means. पर हाँ, जैसे मैंने कहा कि एकदम ये फिलहाल तो one sided love affair है. अभी let's see if their proposal is accepted.
Anyway, well, that's our time for this week. Hopefully we'll be back with next week. We definitely will be back next week, but then hopefully we'll be back next week with our third co-host, Vinayak Mohanarangan. This is me, Amit Kamath, and Mihir Vasavda signing off. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week. Bye.
You were listening to Express Sports by the Indian Express. This week's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by me, Shashank Bhargava. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.